together. Without the PowerPoint, not as easy for me to speak to, but you guys have read up on or have a basic understanding of whole versus part practice, correct? Or is it the newest idea to you? Relatively? Yeah? Okay. Donna's done a good job to teach it to you?
Well, we haven't really technically lectured on that yet, but but they would have some background, like in the coaching and teaching courses and things like that. So yeah, they would be familiar. Yeah.
Okay, so
yeah.
essentially, whole being the complete skill executed with all the individual parts is much more challenging from a neurological standpoint to execute than individual breakdown. So the concept behind this is that by breaking the skill down into different segments and then introducing it with the basic or easiest segment first is a lot easier for someone to pick up on and maximize their skill acquisition. We all know from, I think it was 161, movement skill acquisition, or the three phases, being cognitive, associative, and autonomic. 116. 116. Sorry. There wasn't a 116 when I was here. So if you take that philosophy or that mindset and incorporate that into whole versus part practice, obviously there's going to be a timeline for someone to move through the different phases from cognitive to associative to autonomic, where skills are easy to perform. So early on, when you're teaching a skill, whether it be a part or the whole, there's going to be a timeline that they're going to have challenges. They're going to be very robotic in their movement, having to piece things together on their own versus just going ahead and doing it. And different athletes will be more accustomed to picking things up quicker. Some are very visual learners and can replicate things very easily. Some aren't, and some need to be basically walked through. At Twist Conditioning, we work a lot with the Sentinel High School Sports Academies, well actually West Van School District now, but some of those athletes are great level athletes and they can watch me do something once and turn around and replicate it no problem. Others need to physically take it through at a walking pace before doing it at a jogging pace before they can do it at a sprinting pace. So you see all styles of athlete and all styles of learning going into this. I'm going to use the example of a drop step. Those of you that played soccer, basketball, you might have seen or had these referred to in any of your trainings. Soccer specifically, since we're kind of speaking to soccer, is a sport that involves a lot of different footwork, a lot of different foot skills. Drew kind of spoke to crossovers, very tough skill that they need to break down and work on quite a bit in their trainings with agility ladders. Okay, sorry, did I say crossover step or drop step again?
Drop step you started with,
okay.
yeah.
Well, crossover step, Drew spoke to that. Not the easiest skill for them to perform due to their gait and etc. The drop step is something from a defender's standpoint, which would be very hard for someone with cerebral palsy because they need to have external rotation at the hip so they can drop in and change their direction. Very simply, taking that skill and implementing it into a very controlled or closed environment, having someone rehearse it from basically a starting point with one cone to a cone on a 45-degree angle, having them line up in their ready stance or their athletic ready stance, and just on their own time when they're ready and at their speed, allowing them to drop on a 45, 50-degree angle, excellently rotate their hip, and progress their momentum or their direction opposite to the way they were facing. Okay, defenders rely on this skill a lot, especially the outside backs, left and right back, because teams are trying to pump balls up the sides of the fields. Very common for teams to push teams that way. Okay, keeping them away from the middle of the park so that their scoring chances are minimized. Once you allow them to develop the necessary assets to execute that skill, you can start to put it into a little bit more of an open environment or something that they're forced to do repetitions. So a drill, is this a whiteboard underneath?
I'm actually not sure, Kyle, you can just keep behind, but I haven't used it in here before, so.
And secondly, do you have whiteboard markers?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah. So I believe your guys' last
lab is to take a skill and slowly break it down into its individual parts, and then how you would teach that to build it back up, correct? Okay. So if we consider the drop step, you can use it for soccer, basketball, any form of defensive work. So we have stage 1. Okay. Cone here, cone here. Very simple. Athlete stands here, drops on a 45-degree angle, externally rotates the hip, heads to that cone, decel footwork, come to that cone. Very easy, can be very repetitive, can be at their speed. A little bit. Sorry, again?
I can't see that at all.
Yeah, we
can.
very well. Maybe a black marker?
Yeah, maybe. Just going from bad to worse, eh? Maybe bigger too. So you have your athlete here, maybe the O, 45-degree drop step, accelerate, decelerate the cone, pretty basic, right? You can start out real slow at a walking to jogging pace and slowly increase them up to a running sprinter's pace, okay, once they begin to become more accustomed to it. Stage 2, okay, now you've got a little bit of a V. So, going this way. This one we had the athlete facing down the board, now we're going to have the athlete facing up the board. So if you've got your athlete here as an O, you've got the opportunity to drop step one way or the other. So slightly more open environment in the fact that now they've got to be repetitive. If they come back to, we'll call this cone 1, okay, I just drop step to my left, I run back to cone 1, I now have to be able to apply the same mechanic in the opposite direction without coming to too slow without coming to a blown up stop position or blown through deceleration, so that I can now execute that drop step in the opposite direction that I did the first time. Stage 3, okay, now we're talking adding in reactivity. So same setup as far as cones go, but now you got your coach in front of cone 1. So the athlete's facing up the board at the C or at the coach, and the coach is now giving left or right cues. And the athlete's going to be responding to that external stimuli. Okay, visual. You can also do auditory in the sense of left, right, or you can color the cones, different colors, in red, blue, red, yellow. And now they're coming back to their home cone and receiving their external stimuli, and now I'm dropping and trying to execute that skill with good execution, with good mechanics, and effective timing, so that I can drop step and chase a potential offensive player to the cone, to the ball, whatever it might be. Lastly, in stage 4, okay, 6 cones creating 2 boxes. One here and one here. Now you're creating more of a competitive environment. We have athlete 1 and athlete 2. So in this environment, there's no longer a coach, there's no longer a set direction that the athlete has to go to. Instead, they're now responding to, athlete 2 is now responding to athlete 1. Okay, you can have a mirror system, or you can have more of a sporting environment. So if athlete 1 decides to head to cone 1, athlete 2 has to mimic that movement and drop step to their cone 2. Okay, vice versa. Athlete 1 open steps coming to the forward cone, athlete 2 drop step to this direction. So now it's not necessarily as controlled. It's nowhere near as controlled as stage 1. Okay, stage 2, they know the direction, they know that the timing, they know that they're going to go in the opposite direction that they just did. Stage 3, they're now introducing that external stimulus that they need to react to, and then step 3, you're doing it for a little bit more of a competitive aspect. Okay? What that does is it allows you to work on your drop step footwork, and you can do this for different foot skills and drills as well, so that they're able to execute it at a game type pace with good posture and good mechanics, that they're not tripping and stumbling over their feet, nor are they dropping too much, too less, and not being effective at the angle that they're dropping at. Once you get someone to that level, okay, you can begin to put other footwork in that they're able to play the sport of soccer once you work on like your crossover step, your open step, your lateral shuffle, all skills that soccer or basketball require people to transition from seamlessly into the whole or the game. Okay, and Drew touched on it with the footwork, with the gait, not being able to open step, not being able to move their legs as far lateral as an able-bodied soccer player would. So rehearsing, creating a neurological pathway, or creating a motor program to be as effective as possible is essentially what you're trying to do with part practice. Creating an efficient level with a controlled, closed environment, and slowly progressing that to an open, competitive style environment, if you want to call it that. Are there any questions from that?
Can you go over that again?
No.
Number 4.
So, what part?
4.
Okay.
Like my drawing on the board?
I'll figure it
No. What part of it did you want to go over?
No.
I was just kidding. We can go over it again. We got the room till what?
She was just kidding.
Okay.
You go over
Say it again?
You go over stage 4.
Stage 4. So stage 4 is introducing an external stimuli that isn't a stationary coach. That is a member or an opponent, essentially. Creating competitiveness within a closed, within your training environment. Yes?
So, how would you like, I guess, like, break this into segments?
How would you break it into segments and teach it?
That's-
Yeah,
I don't
it's-
ask that question, but.
No, fair enough. The skill itself never really changes.
Okay.
It's more the environment that that's performing it.
So what it is?
Yeah, so different stages. So you're talking about as controlled, slow-paced as possible that they're able to attain the skill
Okay.
and replicate it to whatever the desirable outcome is or whatever the desirable level of efficiency is. From-
Sorry, so like, sort of, the most basic is stage 1, and then that's what you.
Yeah, closed environment control, the athlete knows what they're going to be doing. It's every expectation is known. I'm going from cone 1 to cone 2, from cone A to cone B. All I have to do is execute a drop step where I open my hips up, okay, lead with my shoulders, my eyes lead the movement, and I'm finishing at that cone. Okay, the only difference between level 1 and level 2 is now you're introducing a second cone or a second direction. They still know that from going to cone 1, they're now going to go to cone 2. It's just now I'm coming in from a forward run position. I have to use decelerated footwork and then drop step in the opposite direction. Exact same drill for stage 3. Now you're just introducing reactivity. So they don't know which side they're going to go to. They still need to be able to execute the same footwork, but it could be left or right. Coach could send them 3 times to the left, and every time they think, eventually they're going to send them to the right. So they're preparing for that. Yes.
So like, what would you say, like, is, is there like a negative aspect of choosing it like that?
Is there any negative?
Like, is there, like, would someone not understand?
Is that all of them?
Like, would they not get
Somewhat.
to here without, like, could you put someone in this environment and have them succeed? Is that what you're-
Yeah, because, like, some people might be really bored or whatever.
Oh, for sure, totally. And you need to be able to find that level of,
extra packing too, so.
the beginning level that you're starting out your athlete with. This, for someone that's played basketball, that's played soccer, might be too low level. They might get really bored. Well, if you're working in a group with people that have never done this before, you're going to see a huge difference. So you could technically take someone that, you've done 2 reps here, you're like, okay, that they can move on, they're executing the skill fine, you can move them on to stage 2. You could put someone in this environment, right to stage 3, and they could be fine. But that's the discretion of the individual that's implementing it. So if you were to coach some athletes and you have 2 girls that you're working with that are elite level volleyball, basketball players, and you put them right in stage 3, just to see what happens, and you find that their execution is perfect, then obviously you don't necessarily need to work on this. If you start to see breakdown, then you can always regress it back to that, and you utilize stage 2, and then re-enter stage 3 and 4. So that's always possible. If I keep moving out of your camera shot. No? Okay. Another example I know would have been in the PowerPoint is juggling. Okay, 1 versus 2 versus 3 ball juggling. Obviously, if someone's never juggled before, tossing them 2 mandarin oranges to throw up in the air is going to be a little tough for them to have timing and motor programming to watch 1 ball in the air while they've got 2 in their hands. So executing the skill with 1 ball, just up and down, controlling that very nice and easily, into transitioning from left to right hand. Okay, introducing a second ball, so it's 1 hand up, transition left to right hand, toss that one up while I catch this one. Okay, slowly creating a bit of a momentum or a circle with the movement, and then into a third ball, where now it's I gotta make sure I got 1 ball in the air, throw another one, transition that while I catch ball 1 while ball 2 still in the air. So that's another example that you can do to slowly take a 3-ball juggling pattern and break it down into its steps so that you're able to work on the parts of it versus the whole.
Any other questions, you guys?
Any more? Nothing? Yes?
So like, are there any other strategies other than this one that you're
No.
just?
It depends on the skill, realistically. It depends. The skill will let you know how far you need to break it down before they can build it back up. Who here's done any Olympic lifting? Yeah? Yeah. Power cleans, clean snatch, clean jerk, sorry.
Or clean jerk.
Yeah? Are you familiar with Olympic lifting at all?
Not Olympic, but pleasure with.
Lifting. So Olympic lifting will just use just the straight clean. So having an Olympic bar in front of you and then dropping down, picking it up, coming through, and catching it in this position. It is hard. This is a really good one to think of just from a pure skill breakdown because there's a lot of different movements that go into this skill that require good execution of the parts to equal the whole. If you have any breakdown in this chain, then the whole is not going to happen. So if you think about it, a traditional deadlift, okay, is just executing a squat, but instead of the bar being on your back, it's on the ground. So you need to be able to execute this skill well before you're going to be able to create momentum properly without risking injury. Okay, the second pull, or the hang clean, coming here to create good hip extension to create momentum into the bar vertically, and then the catch, or the front squat. So you essentially need to be able to do 3 to 4 movements. You need to be able to do a Romanian deadlift well. You need to be able to do a traditional deadlift, a hang clean, and a front squat before you can execute the whole or the power clean. And that's even taking out the whole snatch at the jerk at the end.
So with this skill, like using the simplification thing, what would you do before the drop step? Like a skill before that?
The skill before the drop
Would
step
just be like
even?
running to the cones? Or would you be
You could work on the open step, which would be instead of a reverse drop into it,
Yeah.
would now just me applying a 45-degree angle cut. So keeping everything linear and in front of you.
And then your next progression would be the drop step.
Yes, correct. There's also drills that you can implement that you would use the drop step in a few different ways. So change my cone up to X's. An athlete here, and you can either use a coach from a reactivity standpoint over here, or sorry, actually no, they do down here behind them, or you don't even need a coach. So from here, the athlete, okay, with the cones behind them, would now drop step with acceleration to cone 1. Drop step, acceleration. So from here, run forwards, and then drop step across. So they're actually creating 2 different drop steps. One at the start, and then one at this cone. And you're also using different footwork involved with that as well, like the open step. This drill, you can, instead of sending them up to cone here, you can have a lateral shuffle across, and then an open step across, where you're incorporating a drop step, open step, and a lateral shuffle. So there's different different cone setups that you can use to force the execution of the drop step. Is that kind of